No, I've got one, thanks. It's fine.
Okay. We are calling to order here the Monday, July 8th, City of Colleyville Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. I'd like to call roll first. Commissioner Moore,
Here?
Commissioner Holt. Here. Commissioner Mattison, I'm here. Commissioner Cook,
Here.
Commissioner Bevel,
Here.
and Commissioner Elms.
Here.
Thank you. If I can ask you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance. Lord, as we gather here this evening at this meeting, we ask that you be in our midst. Help us to make decisions that will be pleasing to you. Help us to be able to discuss the matters at hand in a reasonable way and be willing to give up having our own way. Let this meeting be productive and, as should be the case in all areas of our lives, help us to keep you at the forefront of our minds as we do the work set before us. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. At this point, I'd like to invite any citizens to come forward. If you have any items that you'd like to speak to that are not on our agenda for this evening. Public hearing is open. Having no cards and seeing no one coming forward, I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Okay. All right.
One thing that we forgot to do is the minutes, if we could do that first.
I was thinking that we would do that afterwards, but okay.
Oh, at the very end?
Well, after the citizen.
Oh, okay,
Public
great.
hearing. Is that okay now? I was just going to mention that we have a little housekeeping to do. We are going to be approving some minutes from past meetings this evening. Okay. Those meetings were issued as part of our package, and if anyone has any modifications, please let me know. The first set of minutes were from the March 26, 2018 work session. Do I have any modifications that anyone wishes to put forth?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I do not. Okay, if I can ask for a motion to please approve these minutes?
I'll motion to approve the March 26, 2018 work session minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to call for a vote. Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Holt?
Aye.
Commissioner Mattison votes aye. Commissioner Cook?
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel?
Aye.
Commissioner Elms?
Aye.
Thank you very much. March 26, 2018 work session minutes are approved. Now we're moving on to the March 26, 2018 regular meeting minutes. Anyone have any questions or modifications to the minutes as we receive them? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion, please.
Make a motion, we approve the March 26 P and Z meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'd like to take the vote to approve the March 26, 2018 minutes from the regular meeting. Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Holt?
Aye.
Commissioner Mattison votes aye. Commissioner Cook?
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel?
Aye.
Commissioner Elms?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to the next set of minutes that we received in our packets. Minutes from the regular meeting of April 9th, 2018. Does anyone have any questions or modifications to the minutes as submitted? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a vote to approve these minutes.
I make a
Actually,
motion,
thank
I make a motion, we approve the April 9th regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Take a vote to approve April 9th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matheson votes aye, Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel,
Aye.
Commissioner Elms.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, those are approved. Now moving on to the next set of minutes that we received from the April 23rd work session. Any questions or modifications that anyone would like to submit? Okay, seeing no one, I'd like to request a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the April 23rd regular P and Z meeting minutes,
It's from the work session.
our work session.
Okay, very
Sounds
good. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. I will take a vote to approve the work session minutes from the April 23rd, 2018 meeting. Commissioner Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matheson, I vote aye. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel,
Aye.
Commissioner Elms.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That's it. Takes care of our housekeeping in with regards to the meeting minutes. Okay. Now if we can move on to item number, since we've already covered the public hearing, citizen comments, if we can move on to item number 3A. Consideration of a replat for Lot 1R, Block 1 of the J.M. Presley Edition, located at 2308 Glade Road, case number PC 19011. Would you like to present the case?
Good evening, Commission. This is for the property located at 2308 Glade Road. Here's the aerial of it. And it's for a replat to include 17 and a half feet of unplatted area along the east boundary for a total of 2.10 acres. And the property is currently zoned ag and is working through the system right now and will be going to City Council for consideration to be rezoned as an RE, residential estate. Purpose is to create one platted lot to allow for the construction of new single-family residential dwelling. There are no new lots proposed. And this is the zoning map showing where the property currently is located. And the future land use does show it to be residential. The property does reside on the north side of Glade Road between Patterson Court and Jim Mitchell Trail West. It has the ag zoning. And there is the 17 and a half feet area that exists between this property and the adjacent lot to the east that is included in this request. So this is the plat exhibit showing the piece of property including that 17 and a half feet.
Okay.
And this shows the layout of the proposed single-family home that would be locating there. So the applicant is pursuing this replat in order to include that additional 17 and a half feet to accommodate the side yard setbacks required for the residential estate zoning district. This is a notification map showing where we sent notices to because it is a residential replat, and staff received no opposition letters. Staff does recommend approval of the request because it meets the intent of the residential designation assigned in the Destination Colleyville Comprehensive Plan.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions
Just
for staff on this one?
maybe just an update on the status of the 17 and a half foot quitclaim, and is there anything we need to know about that as far as, obviously it's being included, but is there any concerns about that from staff?
We just got updated that it looks like all the heirs have signed the document. We don't think that has been filed yet, but that should happen within a day or two. And so that all should be resolved before council meeting next week.
Awesome.
But it looks like it is well on its way. They did get all the signatures from the heirs.
Perfect.
So you received no opposition letters. Did you receive any letters in the affirmative?
No, we did not for the
Okay,
replat.
that's fine. Okay. Any more questions for staff? And this it really is, just as a reminder, it really is just for the addition of the 17 and a half feet. So, no. Is the applicant here this evening? Would you like to come forward? And you're fine? Okay, okay, very good. All right, thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to, if there's no more questions for staff, I'd like to open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. If anyone would like to come forward to speak on this item, please do so now. I don't have any cards on this item. I see no one coming forward. I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Anyone else like to have additional discussions on this, or is everyone satisfied with the cases we have it put forth?
I would make a motion that we approve case PC 19-011 as presented.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, very good. I'd like to take a vote on case number PC 19-011 in the affirmative. Commissioner Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Matheson votes aye, Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel,
Aye.
Commissioner Elms.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Case is approved. Okay, next up, we will begin the discussions of, it's item number 3B, consideration of amendments to the Land Development Code, specifically Chapter 3, Section 3.7, non-conforming uses, lots and buildings, subsection B, non-conforming lots of record, Chapter 3, Section 3.24, schedule of permitted uses, subsection G, schedule of district regulations, Chapter 3, Section 3.28, and finally supplementary district regulations in Chapter 9, Section 9.7, lots, subsection G, building lines.
All right. Thank you. Ben Briner, Director of Community Development. I thought it'd be easier for me to stand here instead of everyone looking over to the side. So this first section, or this first amendment, proposed amendments, deals with enforcement of setbacks, specifically with the minimum front building lines, or it could be any of the building lines, but where we typically see an issue is when it's adjacent to a street property. That our current standard is to show our front and street side setbacks on a plat. And in some of our older subdivisions, we have a platted building line that does not really match and is not consistent with the existing zoning that's on the property. And so the amendment will basically set the policy that we will be enforcing setbacks per the zoning district on the lot rather than what is shown on the plat. So that's kind of the preview of what the intent of all of these regulations are for. So this first paragraph you see here is in our non-conforming section, and this specifically deals with non-conforming lots of record. I wanted to just highlight that we do have language in this paragraph where, and I've underlined the area for emphasis. It basically says, even in a non-conforming situation, which might be related to size and maybe one of the dimensional elements, it does say that the yard dimensions shall conform to the district in which such lot is located. So your minimum front yard or your rear yard or your side yards have to conform with the district that it has in place. That last sentence does say a variance can also be obtained, but only through action of the City Council per the regulations we have in Chapter 1. Those would be through a variance process. In some situations, they might be able to ask for a plat waiver if there's a plat associated with a project as well. So we do have the language that kind of sets the stage already, but the amendments that I'll point out right now are really to help solidify that and make sure it's crystal clear for everything. Before I do that, so this is our schedule of district regulations, the chart that identifies what the setbacks are for the different districts. And under the, kind of in the middle of that front/street side, we've added the words street side just to make sure it's crystal clear. If there's a property that has street frontage, then it's considered a front, so to speak. And it has to have that same setback, whether it's the front or even the side on a corner lot. It could even be where, well, that's typically where you'll see that. So then off to the side, it's kind of hard to see since it's sideways, but this is additional language that we've also added in section 3.28. So I'll just switch over to this. Basically, it's a statement that all required building lines shall adhere to the minimum yard requirement of the applicable zoning district for the property per section 3.24.6 Schedule of District Regulations, regardless of any setback shown on a plat, unless a documented plat waiver has been approved. So some of the situations we've had, some older subdivisions that were platted several decades ago, they've identified a certain front setback. One example was a front yard setback platted at 25 feet. It has R20 zoning, and the minimum front in that district is 30 feet. And so the practice had always been to follow what the plat showed. So this will change that practice, and it'll have to meet the zoning requirements. So for an R20 district, it would be a 30-foot setback rather than a 25-foot setback. In this same section, 3.28, letters J and K dealt with front yard and side yard amendments. So basically some possible reductions or changes to what the zoning allows. So all of that will just be deleted, and we will just refer to this letter A. It shall meet the zoning district. Now, that last clause, unless a documented plat waiver has been approved, so plats do have that option. They can request for a plat waiver as part of the approval process. And so if we are able to verify through a case that we find in our records that there has been a plat waiver, or maybe a variance process that did go in front of the city council or possibly the zoning board of adjustment, as long as we have that documentation, we will then also recognize those as well. In some of these older neighborhoods, though, we don't have any documentation, so without that documentation, they will just have to meet the zoning requirements. And then in Chapter 9, which deals with the subdivision design and public facilities, it does have a section for lots. And in letter G, again, it's just to make sure it's clear. You can see the modifications there. Basically, we'll read, building lines shall be consistent with the minimum yard requirements of the applicable zoning district in which the lot exists. And again, however, the city may approve building line which differs from the zoning requirements when special conditions exist. And so that will then be documented appropriately, whether it's a plat waiver or a variance. And so we feel that this takes care of all the areas within the land development code to make it clear that our new policy is going to be to follow the zoning district requirement regardless of what the plat says, unless we have that documentation. Staff does recommend approval of these amendments.
When we were in our work session, our pre-commission schedule session earlier, you had mentioned something about variances. I think it was variances that are either exceed 10% or less than 10%, and I think it was variances that 10%.
That's right.
So any variances that are less than 10% can be approved or reviewed by the zoning board of adjustments.
That's right.
And those more than 10% will need to go to city council.
That is correct.
Okay, and the 10% referred to, what did the 10% refer to again, if you can just refresh my memory?
Yeah, so it's specific to each standard. So for a front yard variance, let's take the R40 district. It requires a 40-foot front yard setback. So let's say they are asking for just a 2-foot variance.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be at 38 feet instead of the 40 feet. That's less than 10%. Because 10% of 40 is 4 feet.
Right.
So that would go to the zoning board of adjustment. If they wanted more than 4 feet, so a 5-foot, let's say they want to go down to 35 feet, that's a major variance, so that would have to be heard by the city council.
Okay, and just to be clear, neither any adjustments or, any variances, either less than or more than 10% will be reviewed by this body, planning and zoning. They'll either be city council or the zoning board of adjustments.
That's right.
Okay.
It does not go before you guys.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everyone was clear on that.
And that would be specific to variances. Plat waivers, you guys will be able to review those.
Okay.
Because you review the plats, and so it would only be for variances where you would not see them.
Okay, Very good. Does anyone else have any more questions or
I
more
would,
clear?
I have just I guess a clarification, so I fully understand this. If I go down here and buy an existing home, and on that plat, it says there's a 12.5-foot building line. Today, I can build up to 12.5 feet, but this goes through, then I have to follow our 30-foot setback.
Yes.
Okay, totally understand that, got it.
And what, if any, will be any, in terms of the timing of any properties that are grandfathered in? In other words, in his example here, at what point does that, for that particular property, at what point do those regulations have to be adhered to?
Yeah, it's the day that city council does the final approval, it'll
Okay.
become effective that day.
Okay, thank you. I just want to get clarification on that too. Okay. Any more questions for Ben here? No? Okay. Well, I'm pretty clear on this. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to, if there's no more questions, I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. If anyone wishes to come forward to speak on this matter, please do so now. I don't have any speaker cards, so assuming that there's no one that wishes to come forward, I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Okay. I just want to make sure that before I request a motion that all the commissioners are clear on the modifications as set forth or suggested. Yep. Okay. That being the case, I'd like to request a motion, please, to approve the modifications to the Land Development Code as stipulated in Agenda Item 3B.
I motion to approve the modifications to the community development as stipulated in 3B.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to take a vote. Commissioner Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Mattison votes aye. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel,
Aye.
Commissioner Elms.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, now we're moving on to item number 3C, which is consideration of amendments to the Land Development Code, specifically Chapter 3, Section 3.26, fences, freestanding walls, and screening materials, subsection E, fence and freestanding wall setback requirements. All right.
Thank you. So as you read, this deals with some fencing requirements. It specifically will be in relation to where fences can be located when they're either forward of the house or to a street side of the house. And so this first area, we'll talk about front yards. So currently, fences can go to the minimum yard requirement, so that front yard setback. And it could be a solid fence. Anything beyond that would have to be a 30-foot or 30-inch or less tall fence, and it also would have to be 25% or less opaque. But otherwise, today, they can be built all the way up to the required front yard setback. This amendment would change that to state that they cannot be located beyond the front facade of the primary residential structure. So depending on how close your house is located to the front yard, no fence can extend closer to the street or the front than the front plane, the very frontmost plane of the house. And so if you're set back 50 feet, all your fences have to basically be no closer than 50 feet to the front property line. The one exception is in letter D, when you have a lot that's 40,000 square feet or greater, that allows for fences to go up to the front property line. Once you get forward of that required front building line, though, then it has to be less than 25% opaque. And so it can't just be a solid wall up at the front property line. it would have to be wrought iron. Typically, we see the wrought iron with columns, but no more than 25% opaque. So that was fairly straightforward, but it basically says cannot be closer than the front of the house, the very front plane of the house.
Okay.
For corner side properties, the current language states that a privacy fence shall have a setback, and it depends on what the adjacent property is. Right now, it's no closer than 2/3 of the required setback, that front setback, which was a modification that was approved in December. But that did give some allowance for solid fences to encroach into that required setback. In other cases, depending on the adjacent property, it would have to meet the full setback. But that, again, was just for solid or privacy fences. Basically, it was any solid fence taller than 30 inches or any other fence that was greater than 25% opaque. So that did allow for the non-opaque fences to go all the way to the property line. So this amendment now reads that, or is proposed to read that no fence or freestanding wall greater than 30 inches in height and no greater than 25% opaque construction shall extend into the required street side yard. So it doesn't matter the type of fence, all fences would have to meet that required front setback. So there would be no allowance to encroach into that required yard. And so typically, or really what this, how this is worded is what the front yard requirement how it currently reads. So that would limit any fences from encroaching into that required front yard setback. And so all of these other conditions, A through D, end up going away because those were the different scenarios that would allow for some type of encroachment into the setback.
Ben, one question.
Yeah.
The exception that applies to on the first slide that talked about 40,000 square foot lot, does that same exception apply here or not?
Yes, it still applies. It applies to the entire property.
Okay.
When it's 40,000 square feet.
But it doesn't need to be it's stated separately on that. Does it need to be stated separately under this one, or is it already inferred?
I
That's a
had the
good
same question, actually, yeah. I think it should be restated, quite
Yeah, I
frankly,
think that I'll go ahead and restate that.
Thank you.
because it's different sections of the code.
Well, but since it says, can you go back where we were? Except where allowed elsewhere in this chapter, would that cover it?
It probably does,
That's
but I
what I
don't
would-
think that it hurts in this case to go ahead and repeat
Okay, okay.
just letter D. It wouldn't be A through C. Although,
Yeah, because it does say exceptions to front yard requirements, so you probably want to say exceptions to side, or whatever you're calling it, street side, or
yeah,
corner side, or whatever you're calling it.
okay.
I mean, it's specific to front yard, so it should probably be restated.
Yeah, so I might have to do some additional wording just to reference back to 1A as far as the material here, but, well,
Or
I'll have to review this to make sure.
Or just restate it in this section 3.26, since it is a different section.
Yeah.
We just have it restated just for absolute clarity.
I'll go ahead and do that.
And just one other question too. If somebody is, obviously because it's already in place and they're not compliant to this new rule, and they go to replace the fence, that's still grandfathered in?
Yes, so we actually have a new proposed language. Well, before I get to that, though, there is another paragraph that references sections A through D. I will just say to the preceding paragraph. I might change that to, if we're going to start reiterating some of the same things from a front yard, I'll make sure that that's modified as well. So then to answer your question, this number 6 is a new regulation for that exact scenario of fence replacement. We do anticipate that a lot of fences will become legal nonconforming. And so this is, would allow for the replacement of a fence and it may be replaced as long as it does not increase the non-conforming nature for both location and design. Any change will require compliance with the above. So what that means is if you have a solid wood fence, you can replace it. You would not be able to expand the limits of that fence. It could only replace exactly what's there. If you have a wrought iron fence, you would not be able to replace that with a solid fence. You would have to maintain a wrought iron fence. And again, you would not be allowed to increase the limits of that fencing either.
And that's new.
Now, I guess the question could be whether, as I would enforce this statement, I would allow for a reduction in the amount of fencing. If you're okay with that.
I don't know if that's necessary because the, as you have it here, it sort of covers that.
Okay.
You know, I think of, you know, kind of like a like-kind exchange, thinking of taxes actually, but anyway, it covers it because it says does not increase the non-conforming nature.
Right.
So I think it's covered.
And this is probably really picking, would never happen, but if somebody does reduce it, then that becomes the new standard. They can go back to it.
Exactly.
Now, let me ask you this. If a property is sold to a different owner, how do these provisions apply? In other
They
words,
still apply. It's tied to the property, not to the ownership.
Okay, gotcha. Yep,
And we do require permits for all fences.
okay,
Yeah. So they should be coming in with, if they're going to do anything with their fence, they should be coming to us to get the appropriate permit, and we'll be able to review everything.
okay, good.
And I have some aerial photos if you wanted to look at them to try and help visualize anything. But otherwise, staff does recommend approval of these changes as well.
In our pre-commission meeting, I think you walked us through one or two examples. So if you can do that again for us here, just so if anyone's watching at home, that they'll be able to have the information, have the opportunity to walk through that with you as well.
Okay. So I like this photo a little bit better than the other one, but kind of on the left-hand side with the big curved street, you can see that there's a lot of houses that do not line up with the very next house. And so essentially what that means is that each individual property will be able to build their own fence up to the front of their house. Their next door neighbor has a different setback, and so they'll be able to either build more or not as much, just depending on how far, where their house is located in relation to the front property line. So that's what you would anticipate to see as far as implementation of the front yard requirement. Each property will be individualized just depending on the front of their house. For the corner properties, basically it just, whatever their front is, they can't have any fencing forward of the house, but then on their sides, they would have to stop at that building line requirement. They would not be allowed to encroach any closer to the street side property line than the required setback.
So looking at, what is this? I can't read it. Cheshire Lane? Cheshire Drive?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you look at property 4209 up in the corner there, I think, I'm sorry, 4208. Sorry, I don't have my glasses.
Right.
So that
So that one's
fence
set
set
back.
back quite a bit,
Yeah.
whereas 4204 would be quite a bit closer to the street.
Right. So 4208, their fencing has to be pushed all the way back to the very front of their house.
Okay,
Yep, so it'll be pushed way back compared to that house just next to them to the south.
okay. Okay, good. Does anyone else have any more questions or would like clarification? Okay, I think that I'm fine. Thank you so much.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve amendments to the Land Development Code, Chapter 3, Section 3.26, with the slight modification that been discussed.
Do you mind if I open the public hearing very quickly first?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'd like to open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. I don't have any cards on this item, but if anyone does wish to come forward to speak on this, please do so now. I don't see anyone coming forward, so I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Okay. And if we have no more discussions, I would like to request a motion.
I am so sorry.
No, that's okay.
So I, again, will make the motion that we approve the amendments to the Land Development Code, Chapter 3, Section 3.26, to include the modifications that been discussed in his presentation.
Thank you. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay. Taking a vote to approve the modifications on Chapter 3, Section 3.26 as discussed in this meeting this evening. Item number 3C. Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Hull? Aye. Commissioner Matheson votes aye. Commissioner Cook?
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel?
Aye.
Commissioner Elms?
Aye.
Thank you so much. I don't see anything else on our agenda this evening, so I am going to adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much.